If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay. A little late start there. Okay, but welcome to the show. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. The name of the show is The Opperman Report, named it after myself. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. Oh, by the way, too, it is kind of important right now with the Patreon stuff. I got a little tip that Trump is going to be announcing November 15th at Mar-a-Lago is going to be announcing he's running for president. And I've gotten press credentials for it. I can go down there and attend the press conference and stuff and cover it. But I mean, it's down in Palm Beach, and it's really expensive down there. Like, you can't find a cheap motel, or even like, like a Days Inn. Well, not a Days Inn, but like a Hampton Inn. You know what I mean? For like $125, you can't even find that down there. Everything's like $200, $250. So, and the press conference doesn't start till 9:00 at night. So, if you want to help support this trip, you can go to OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. You can donate by PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can become a member at Patreon. If you do a year in advance, you get a 10% discount. So that would be nice, because I want to get down there. It'll be historic. Plus, I know there's some people. The guy who tipped me off used to be a big listener to the show way, way, way back in Revolution Radio days. Way back, like 9 years ago. We still stay in touch, and he's a member at Mar-a-Lago. He knows Trump. So I'd like to reconnect with him, and also some other people down there, from my old New York days that I'd like to reconnect to with as well. That I think we can start getting some better information. So, I got the invite. I can get in. You know what I mean? I just need to fund it. Need some financing for it. So if you guys want me down there, and that's what it's going to take. Because I got to take time off, gas, and then lodging. And then plus, you can't sit around Mar-a-Lago without a drink or two. I got to have a martini. I think they're like $25 out there. So, okay. So anyway, that's Patreon. Then if you want to find me, want to hire a PI, OppermanInvestigations@gmail.com. And then what's the other one is Friday nights we do a live show. Right now it's 11/11/22. That should be like a lucky number, right? And on a Friday night, 8 p.m., we do a live show. And then all the new content goes up on the podcast on Friday nights. People are so confused. It's so confusing to find out. I should laugh. So many people say, well, Ed, you play repeats all the time. I don't understand. When does the new stuff come out? It's been coming out on Friday nights for 9 years. Okay. I don't know. But I should talk because I thought today was Thursday. Okay. I only found out that today was Friday a few minutes ago, so my notes aren't quite complete, but I got a lot on my mind that I want to talk about this week. You know what's going on? A friend of mine is writing a book, and so she's been sending me over the chapters. Also, and then I'm making little corrections and suggestions. I'm sending them back for her. And I got to tell you, when I read books, I always read factual books. I'm not into novels. I read some Hemingway, Sun Also Rises, and some Hunter S. Thompson, but never really into novels. I always like historical, factual books, And so this is almost like a romance novel. It's a relationship book, and it's about this woman who, she's married to this guy and she cheats on her husband, and then she leaves her husband. Then the husband finds out. Then she goes with the other guy. Then she goes back to the husband, and then it doesn't work out with the husband. Then it doesn't work out with the other guy, and she's off on her own. And if there's some parts of her romantic life in this book that is my story. It's my life. I've never been written about it in a novel before. I'm in a bunch of books. I'm in like 6 or 7 books by now. But I've never been written about like this, like with a different name, like my character. And seeing this story from a different perspective, it's really had a huge emotional impact on me. All the past week, I've been back and forth with this stuff, So I got caught up in that. I didn't realize that tonight was the show. But it's just it's fascinating to see someone else's perspective on a romantic relationship that you had so long ago, and like the ideas you have in your head, and the other person's not even thinking that stuff. And just anyway, nothing going on in my freaking life. Okay, that nobody cares about. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Coming up after this, okay, good. Jerry Marzinski. This is a pretty good show. We're going to have him come back, too. Now, this is the guy who was the therapist. He's written a book called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, and that should appeal to my listeners. An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. And he's come to this conclusion that the voices that schizophrenics hear in their head is not an internal voice. It's not in their brain. They are actually communicating with some other outside entity. And I have a lot of reason to agree with him. And we get into that. This is a part one of an interview. We're going to do a second part, and we're going to come back and because we cover this thoroughly. So I really enjoyed this interview. Then the second show tonight will be Janet Phelan returns to talk about researching these judges and the money laundering scams and the bribery scams that they use. Very good discussion too as well. You'll learn some good information from that show. Janet Phelan is doing some really good work. And I don't think I mentioned how you can support her, but if you go to her website, you can support her at janetphelan.com. No, I don't know what her website is. I forget. Okay, I've got a bunch of good shows coming up. I taped with Casey Gain McGowan today, but he's got a new podcast coming up called Reality Theory. It's coming up on November 22nd. You can find it on YouTube. Travis Mateer came back to talk about a murder up there in Missoula, Montana. Oscar Brophy is that bar owner in Slovakia that talked about an assassination up there. So a couple of gay guys that were killed by this Nazi type, this anti-Jewish Nazi up there. We had Jack O'Halloran come back. I don't know if you remember him, but he was the guy who was the one of the three aliens, I guess they were, in Superman, one of the three villains in Superman, the big tall one. And he also played the part of Emil Muzz in the movie Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd. And who's that guy? I just had it in my head there. He's like a big guy now. He's a big shot. He's in all those movies. Tom Hanks. And if you go back and watch that, there's a lot of connections between the Process Church, because there's an evil group called the Pagans in there, and very similar to the Process. And Emil Muzz looks a lot like, the character looks a lot like Bill Menser, okay? And then there's another character in there that's like a magazine owner that could be fashioned after Larry Flint, So there's a lot of interesting stuff in that movie that kind of crosses over into real life. So I asked him about that, and about a lot of other stuff that, he's got a lot of stories. Let's just leave it at that. He's got a lot of stories. Oh, God. Then coming up, too, we're waiting for this fellow for the book to, closer to the book release, Red, White, and Blind, The Truth About Censorship. And it's all about, he's that guy I've been talking about, this journalist who's all optimistic about podcasters and freedom of the press and all this kind of stuff like that. I'm not optimistic whatsoever. I was talking to Casey Gain McGowan today, and he's also optimistic, but I tell you, I am not. And also, too, I am this whole thing with the Twitter going on right now. You hear right now how like Musk just fired like half the staff over at Twitter. And so you got to think these are programmers and code writers and stuff like that all have been fired that are very familiar with the Twitter software. So if there are going to be hacking attempts at Twitter, you got about 3,000 or 4,000 people pissed off enough to want to do that. So at this point, I would caution you, if you have old messages in the communications in Twitter, the private messages, I would delete those. If there's anything sensitive, which is what I've gone and done, okay? Some of it I've taken screenshots from my own records, but much of it I've deleted. Plus, do you want Elon Musk having access to your private messages? He's not some guy with ethics or something like that that's not going to take advantage of the situation, And it's a lot smaller world than people think, It's not like as far, look, I'm going to be right there with the President of the United States in 2 weeks. And all the guys around him, his son, Dershowitz is going to be there, Giuliani's going to be there, Bo Dietl will be there. All the people I talk about on this show. I'm going to be walking right up to him. So I made a comment this week that I think we were better off before Twitter, and I think we were better off before Facebook and stuff like that. I think as a culture and as a society, we were just better off back then, where we had more face-to-face contact, and you had to get on, if you wanted to communicate with someone, instead of typing out this nonsense, you had to get on the phone with them or drive over and see them, or at least, type out a letter or a fax or even an email, rather than this shorthanded communication, which is always, odds are, more short-tempered. But it's also, too, a detachment from reality, okay, that I'm becoming increasingly concerned about. I played a repeat today called Crossfire Hurricane, A Tipping Point, okay? And I played that repeat for a reason. I would recommend people to go and listen to it, especially the second half, because I'm going to be talking about that in a bit. And I believe we're reaching a tipping point with our detachment from reality in society in general, at least in the United States, what I can see, the people I'm in contact with. But I'm in contact with a lot of people, too, in England and Ireland and Wales and stuff like that, Scotland, and a lot of Scottish guests on the show. And, living in Florida now, when you meet girls on Tinder and stuff like that, and you see them on Instagram, and they're OnlyFans. There's because it's Florida, a lot of people wear bathing suits. A lot of these women are like half naked. And we've never had that in my lifetime, where some women are just so sexualized to such an extreme. And so I don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. We don't know yet, because it's only been a very short period of time where we've had this, where so many women are making their living from exposing their bodies, and sometimes even having video sex and cams and stuff. We don't know how this is going to turn out, because it's only been a short time. It's only been like 20 years that we've had this. And this kind of streaming has even been less than that, like the last 10 years or 15 years. So I'm very, very concerned with all this, and like I said, I'm very, very concerned with this detachment from reality. And we're going to be getting into that. Now, when I was a kid, and I lived in the Bronx, and I'm talking about when I was a kid, 5, 6, 7 years old, like before first grade, before second grade, before third grade. All us kids, we would play outside, and our moms didn't have to work back in those days. You talk about in 1965, your mother didn't have to work. Your father worked, and your mother stayed home. Very few mothers worked, So while the kids were playing, the mothers would be outside supervising us and watching us. And they'd have a little bag with some snacks in there, some Band-Aids, in case you cut yourself, which you always did, And, back in those days, they put a Band-Aid on you. The same Band-Aid would be on you for a week, and then you pull it off and pull the scab back off. That's why they say rip the Band-Aid off, that expression. And that was something you really had to do. You really had to rip that damn Band-Aid off, and then you're bleeding again. And then you got a suntan that week too, so it's like a white spot where the Band-Aid was. Now you got to get another Band-Aid. But anyway, I'm digressing. So all the moms would sit there at this long bench while the kids played in the park or in the different parks we had in our neighborhood in the Bronx. And I guess they drink a little bit, now and then. They bring some wine down there once in a while. And get into arguments and fights, And I remember most of the women were like Italian and Irish. But there were a couple of Hispanic women that my mom would talk to privately, And when they would get alone, they'd be talking, gossiping about all the other women in Spanish, Spanglish, a little English, a little Spanish. Maybe like one black woman. So, being a young Hispanic kid, we were like the minority in this neighborhood at that time. So one of the things that all these moms would be into, and they would all be discussing, and they all had in common, was these things called soap operas. As the World Turns, All My Children, all these bizarre soap operas, right? With these bizarre stories of these families and they're having affairs. And then the stories would get more convoluted and exaggerated. Let's say an actor wanted to leave the show, but then, we had to go do a movie or something like that, but then wanted to come back. They would have to make up a reason. Say, well, he was off on a safari and he hit his head. He got amnesia. And he's been wandering around the jungle. Or they'd come back and say, well, that's not him. That's his long lost twin brother. He looks just like him. These crazy storylines that were far fetched. But here you had these women, not educated, sipping a little wine in the afternoon. They really have nothing to do. But argue with each other and focus on their kids. So they're not doctors. They don't know about amnesia. They don't know. Or they'd be like a court litigation thing. They don't know. They don't know any better. So they believe these stories, these far-fetched hysterical stories. Right? And today, you see these things. Like prior to the election, 2020, when Biden was the front runner in the Democratic end of the capitalist campaign there. Right? And you had all these people, because they have these bizarre, detached from reality theories that, well, what they're going to do is they're putting Biden up first, but then they're going to say he got sick or he's mentally unstable, and then he's going to drop out, and Hillary's going to sweep in, and like these crazy theories. And again, because the average person who comes up with these things, they're not very savvy. They don't understand how campaigns work. My daughter works on these campaigns. We know how these things work, and we have friends who run for office. We pick people to run for office, But the average guy out there doesn't understand these things, and you can't blame him for that. But there's also this kind of fantasism, this fantasism. And in our area of, I guess you'd say, media or reporting, we discuss a lot of things that are, the JFK assassination, 9/11, Iran-Contra, things that cause you to have mistrust of the official story. So many times my interviews here, well, okay, tell us what the official story is, and then tell us what really happened, especially if it's like police shooting unarmed people, that kind of thing. So we're kind of open to that. We're open to the possibilities that, hey, we're not being told a straight story. So, and if you don't have any experience in these areas, any firsthand life experience, like this isn't what you do for a living, it's easy to get caught up in wild theories and fantasy and become detached from reality. Now, what did we have this week? This week we had on November 7th, and by the way, this is really hugely underreported, okay, out there. You might not even know this, but on November 7th, there was a settlement agreement with Alan Dershowitz, Virginia Giuffre, and Virginia Giuffre's attorneys, Mr. Boyce, and the other partner there, okay? And they came up with a settlement where they were all going to say, well, we're all going to go our separate ways. She's withdrawing her complaint. Dershowitz is withdrawing his complaint. The attorneys in Dershowitz had defamation lawsuits back and forth, too. So it became a hodgepodge, a little cocoon, a little potpourri of litigation here going back and forth, okay? And, and it specifically says no money is changing hands. No money has changed hands or anything of value. It was worded a little stranger than that. Let me see if I can pull this up. But the titles, and by the way, I can't find the PDF of this settlement press release anywhere. It was handed to the New York Times, and everyone is quoting the Times article. And I don't have an account with the Times, so I don't know if there is a PDF of this. All we have is quotes of it. And then even the quotes of it, if you go to all these different websites, like what's one here? CNN was one. There's another one here, Daily Beast. They've been updated since they were first uploaded. And the reason for that is that Dershowitz, I believe, is contacting all these publications in CNN, because CNN has a quote from Dershowitz, okay, and he's telling them, hey, man, you're reporting on this, and it's making it look like, well, the title on this is Virginia Giuffre says Dershowitz abuse claim may have been a mistake. And Giuffre is dropping the charges. Giuffre is withdrawing. It's all that but if you read the entirety of the agreement, it's not what it says at all. She says, hey, man, at the time I believed it was him. Possibly I made a mistake. Dershowitz is saying, I've denied this all along. I don't think she was being malicious or lying when she thought it was me. And the attorney says, I no longer believe the attorneys were trying to extort me or extort other people. So this is a pretty balanced settlement. Now, in general, defamation cases are a dog, okay? When people come to me, and they want help and stuff like that, they want a defamation case. No one wants to take a defamation case. There's no money at the end of it. It's so easily to be appealed, and there's so many requirements, that the malice, all kinds of things that have to be, thresholds that have to be met in a defamation case. It's a dog of a case. And in a situation like this, we have Dershowitz, who's fighting for his life, for his public life, and he's obviously very serious about this. He's going to drag this on for a million years. He has the political connections also, too, to go to bar association, make bar complaints. I'm sure that what might have happened to encourage this settlement may have been the bar telling all these lawyers, hey, you've all got bar violations in your behavior here and your activity here. Get this damn thing settled now. Now, there's a quote in here, okay? So first of all, if you've never worked on a case like this, okay, you've never been a defendant in a case like this, you've never been a plaintiff in a case like this, you've never been an investigator in a case like this, you've never been a paralegal in a case like this, then it's easy to think, well, hey, maybe this is all a big act. Hey, this proves Virginia Giuffre is lying all along, and maybe even. What it could be is that they put her up to this, so then it'll damage Ghislaine Maxwell's case, and she'll get released, and and all these wild, hysterical theories. Okay, this is all a big trick. It's an act. Okay, now first of all, if you're gonna try and pull, first of all, the idea that you're gonna try, that's how you would come up with a solution to this situation. It's just so crazy and so far fetched. It hinders on amnesia or a long lost twin returning from the grave. Okay, that's the kind of stuff we're talking. That's how bizarrely hysterical that is. That kind of thinking. Okay, but let's say you are going to try and take that route, okay? You would need operatives, okay, like expert operatives, professionals, okay, that are trained for this kind of thing, okay? And in this case, it is painfully clear that we don't. What we have are people that have been through trauma, clearly have been through trauma. Some of them I've talked to myself, okay? And that's just not what we have here, that it's some kind of an operation, okay? Because if it was an operation, these are not the people you would choose for that operation, okay? That's as simple as it gets. So there's that. What we have here, in my opinion, is Dershowitz was exhausted. Giuffre was exhausted. There's really no money at the end of the rainbow. Boyce and his partner were exhausted. And they said, let's just settle this damn thing. And they're saying, they released a joint statement here, which was, you could tell, it was heavily negotiated. One of the lines says, does not involve the payment of any money by anyone or anything else. Now, that's not a contract. That's not a legal stipulation filed in the court. This is a joint statement, okay? So they're telling us no money has exchanged hands. Okay? Well, first of all, we know that in the previous lawsuit, same situation, defamation with Dershowitz, in 2016, Dershowitz paid to settle that case. So money has already changed hands. Okay? So while they're saying here, oh, well, Giuffre admits she's lying, none of that has happened here. And let me tell you something else. The first time that joint statement came out with Brad Edwards and Dershowitz, and people were sending that joint statement to me, everyone was saying, oh, Ed, look at this. Oh, no, Dershowitz won. I says, no, I don't read it that way. I don't read it that way at all. I'm telling you, he settled. He paid. Okay? And everyone says, oh, well, Ed Opperman thinks differently, but this is what happened. Ed Opperman. Well, Ed Opperman was right, okay? Because it came out in other litigation that he paid to settle that lawsuit. I'm not the type of guy to say, I told you so. Okay, whenever I say I told you so, just because I was right and you were all wrong, okay, the first time. I wouldn't say I told you so. Of course not. I'm not that kind of guy, just because I was right and you were wrong. Okay? But he's already paid to settle. This is not a contract or an agreement or a stipulation in a motion in court. This is a statement released to the press, only to the New York Times, and we don't even have a copy of it. Everyone else is quoting from it. Everyone else is quoting from the New York Times quotes of it. Okay? So just because they say no money has changed hands, that doesn't mean a damn thing. Money could change hands. Stocks could change hands. Property could change hands. Money could have changed hands, and they just told us that it didn't. Okay? Do you know how these things work? Do you know that when these cases are settled sometimes, that part of the deal is that they go back into Wikipedia and change Wikipedia entries, that they go back and previously written articles online are removed with these allegations and statements and stuff like that? Did you know that? Of course you didn't, because you never did this work. Okay? You have no involvement in any of this. And your conclusions and your opinions are not based in experience or reality. That's just a fact. You're coming up with wild stories because you think it's all a game and you think it's all entertainment. All right, now I think I covered everything on this Dershowitz case. All right. If you read the wording of all this, it's a bunch of nothing. And this is definitely cannot be interpreted that only Virginia Giuffre withdrew. Everyone's withdrawn. Everyone's dropped their counterclaims, their counter lawsuits. Everyone's dropped everything. So this is not some kind of evidence that she's a liar or she's wrong or she made a mistake. Okay. Now, by the way, there is some discrepancies. She had written a manuscript years ago, and there are some discrepancies in her telling of the story in the manuscript and how it's been told in court. That's old news. Okay, I have no problem with that. That kind of stuff happens all the time, where a previous statement may conflict with a current statement. Your memory changes. That's not a big deal at all. But then again, too. But if you're not doing this kind of work, you don't understand how these things work. You kind of think that maybe, hey, maybe got amnesia, maybe got hit in the head, maybe it's his twin brother, because that's how some people are thinking these days. When they're watching these things for entertainment. Okay. Lauren Boebert, it's a close race over there in Colorado, the Lauren Boebert district over there, by a handful of votes, Now, this is a perfect example, all right, where my little bit of reporting on Lauren Boebert could have an effect on that race, especially if we were on some local stations over there in Colorado, which is so close within reach. Just need some sponsors and stuff, and it's just it's just so frustrating. And is it even worth it, all this, all this work, Like, I can't even scrape up the couple of bucks to get down to Mar-a-Lago. And I don't want to hear, oh, Ed's broke all the time. I got my own bills. I'm doing this for you. If you want me to go there, I got to get paid. If you don't want me to go there, I won't go there. Yeah. So I've been, my motivation to get on more stations and try and influence these kind of races is one thing. And my motivation to take on these big cases like I've done in the past, like these big heavy cases that are dangerous to my own personal future and my life and my income and the different kind of harassment and problems you get in dealing with these kind of things, And I'd kind of made up my mind in the past year, hey, man, I'm going to start backing away from taking these big cases. So I'm still debating that, okay? And I'm more leaning toward being willing to stick my neck out a little bit more in these kind of things. I only got a few years left to do this kind of stuff anyway. But I'm not kidding myself here that, I saw this thing where they were saying that, on the day of your funeral, right? Like it was the day Ed Opperman is being buried, right? Or cremated, however they do that these days. At the service, everybody's talking about you, and they say these glowing things about you like that. But then even a couple hours after the service, when people are going to the reception with his food and stuff like that, a couple hours into that, people stop talking about the deceased. They're already discussing other things. And then a couple of days after that, your close, intimate family, they're back to work, And a month later, they've forgotten all about you. And these are the people closest to you in your life. They're forgotten in a month. If I was off the air, I'd be forgotten by all these listeners in a week, 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, remember that Opperman? Oh, yeah, he was always complaining. The commercials. And so for the amount of sacrifice I put into this, I don't get back the kind of reward that you would imagine. And I talked to a guy today, like Casey Gain, who's running head on into this. He wants to, get into this. You have no idea what goes on in the background here, the nightmares that go on, and the crazy people out there. It's more than you can even imagine. So we have to consider what we're going to be doing there. So maybe this will be a good motivation here if we see some kind of people stepping up to help out with this Mar-a-Lago trip, whether I continue doing this or not. I get so many emails. Oh, Ed, we love your work. Whoa, Ed, you're doing so much. Oh, Ed, thank you for everything you do. Oh, where are you now? And I need you. Interesting statement came out this week by, who's that? Ivanka and Jared. They came out and said that they don't want their father to run for office again, and they will not work on the campaign, and they will not work at the White House. And what a departure that is, And Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer guy, he's saying that he thinks that Jared Kushner is an FBI mole, which would make sense, and he would know, because there's still communications with these people, We know that Michael Cohen is still getting paid by Jerry Falwell Jr. Not to discuss Epstein and not to discuss Trump's abortions and that kind of stuff. So we know there's still communications, back channel communications between these camps. That's just how it is, especially in New York. You talk to your enemies. So we'll see what's going on with that. And then also, too, very interesting, too, with this whole situation between Trump and DeSantis. Because I'm in Florida here. I got to deal with this DeSantis character. He's a very dangerous guy. This guy's no joke, man. He's got his own voter police force, man. He's setting people up and having them arrested. There's people down here, minorities, that were told, yes, you can legally vote. Then when they voted, they were arrested. There were warrants for their arrest, like months later. That woman, Rebecca Rebecca Jones, the one who was counting the COVID stuff like that, they raided her house twice. She was arrested twice over this stuff, for being a political person. First time was this bizarre stuff about fighting with her child's biological father, custody arguments. She was arrested over that. And then her house was raided because she was logging into the COVID numbers, without authorization. But still, you don't raid someone, that kind of stuff. You send them a letter. Okay? It's like that Megan Walsh case, man. Like, you hear what's going on there, man. When again, state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, the same people. So anyway, so Trump is fighting back against DeSantis. And first comment he made was that the sanctimonious, he called him the sanctimonious, he called him. And then the next day, what came out was there's these old pictures of DeSantis. It came out about a year ago. And there's pictures of him. And he was a high school teacher. And he was going to parties, like beer parties with solo cups and stuff like that, with the high school teenagers and drinking with them. This is an old story, but it was definitely brought back up by Trump's camp this week. Okay? And then now Trump's coming out openly and saying that he has blackmail dirt on DeSantis. And then also, too, Trump does this bizarre admission where he says, yeah, DeSantis was losing, and I sent him the Department of Justice, and we got, we saved the election for him. He's practically admitting that he rigged the election in favor of DeSantis. I was talking to Casey Gain about all this today. You got to go back and listen. Matt Gaetz, my understanding is, after this election, his indictment's coming down. You got Joel Greenberg bending over backwards to give up Matt Gaetz. He doesn't want to spend his life in prison. This is a guy who was buddies with DeSantis, was buddies with Matt Gaetz, who was on YouTube video talking about how if he goes to prison, if he goes to jail, he's going to be dope sick in jail, and that he has tannerite. He's buried tannerite in his front lawn with batteries and screws and nails and stuff like that, and he's going to shoot them like IEDs to hold off any incoming police officers to execute their arrest warrant on them. So this is the kind of guys we're dealing with here, man. This is no joke, I'm walking right into this too, and all these guys are going to be there, when I go down there the 15th. So, running out of time. Coming up after this will be, what do you call it? Jerry Marzinsky about hearing these voices, and then Janet Phelan about these the conservatorships. Especially, we talk about Vegas a lot, and these bribery schemes that they do. And she's when I was talking to her, she says it's a lot easier to get this mortgage information. She says you can just get it online for free, but I know that's not true. I have a guy that I use for that to get that information. If I can get it for free, I would get it for free. So it's a little more difficult than she lets on. All right, guys. I pretty much run out of material for this evening. I didn't know tonight was my show. I thought today was Thursday because I've been all consumed with this story. Really, the story of a huge part of my life. Just romantic life back in the 80s and early 90s. And so it's been very, very emotional for me to go back and read all this stuff, and then to make little suggestions, on how to change stuff and things like that. But it's a beautiful book, man. And I'm almost tempted to write my version of what I was going through during that period of time, because this was a very passionate romance. It was very painful for all of us, everybody involved. I had no idea how painful it was for other people. So just really, really been moved by this story. It's really been consuming me all week long. So once again, if you want to help support this trip to me covering the Trump, I'll broadcast it live too if I'll go down there. And I'll try and get interviews, but also to make some reconnections with some people that I know would advance my work here that I'm doing for you. So that would be, you go to paypal.com, oppermanreport@gmail.com is the PayPal. There's a donate button on oppermanreport.com, and also too, if you want to support Patreon, it would have to be something significant, like a year's membership with Patreon. But I only need a couple, and then I can get down there. Do I want to go down there on my own dime? I don't know if I do, if I will, if I can, because this is big. Holiday season is big income months with radio. This is where you make all your money. I got to be recording shows. I got to be taping shows. So let's see what we can do with that. All right, guys. Good night. Coming up after this is Jerry Marzinski. Something about psychopaths, psychotics. An amazing journey into the psychotic mind, breaking the spell of the ivory tower. Good night. And now a word from our sponsors.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking, true stories need no embellishment.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents, they handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at KMDLaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to KMDLaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. And Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during